By the way, former CDC Chief Susan Monarez testifying before the Senate today. The doctor telling the Senate that her former boss, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., did not fire her because she admitted she was not trustworthy. That instead, Kennedy required she pre-approve recommendations from a CDC panel that he stalked with his own people, and that if she refused, then she would get the boot. Script News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen is on Capitol Hill for us. And Stephanie, it was quite the hearing today.
Hey, Del, it absolutely was. So there were kind of two main issues that kept repeatedly coming up in this hearing. Of course, the biggest one being why exactly was Susan Monarez fired? Why exactly was she pushed out of the CDC after less than a month on the job? And on one reason behind her firing, both she and Secretary Kennedy testified to the same effect. Both of them testified that she was asked to fire some career CDC scientists and experts, and that she was refusing to do that. They both testified, Secretary Kennedy testifying a couple weeks ago in front of the Senate Finance Committee. On that point, they agree. But they gave conflicting testimony on whether or not she was asked to rubber stamp future vaccine recommendations and future changes to the childhood vaccine schedule. I want to have you listen to her explaining it herself from the hearing earlier today.
Secretary Kennedy told me he could not trust me. I had refused to commit to approving vaccine recommendations without evidence, fire career officials without cause, or resign, and I had shared my concerns with this committee. I told the secretary that if he believed he could not trust me, he could fire me.
As you heard there, she said she shared some of their concerns after some of these conversations with Secretary Kennedy with the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. We later learned in the hearing that she shared those concerns, those comments with the chair, Senator Bill Cassidy. He relayed those concerns to the White House and to HHS officials, and that's how it got back to Monarez, who was still at the CDC at the time. And she says Secretary Kennedy was upset with her for speaking to senators and for talking to Senate staffers. She said, she testified today, that she was just fulfilling what she had agreed to do during her confirmation process. Of course, she was the first CDC director to need to go through Senate confirmation. That was a change that was recently made. Of course, though, we don't know exactly who is going to be the next permanent CDC director. There is an acting one in place right now.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Stephanie, lots of parents right now wondering what to do next. What can you tell us about what is called the upcoming ACIP meeting? And will there be any changes to vaccines?
Well, Monarez testified today that it sounds like there are changes expected to the childhood vaccine schedule. According to what she told the committee members today, that part of what she was asked to rubber stamp, part of what she was asked to pre-approve was changes that Kennedy was expecting after the September meeting of this key vaccine advisory panel. That was a question, and that was something that she was pressed on multiple times throughout this committee is, what exactly does this panel do? She was asked whether she or the other woman testifying today, Dr. Deborah Oury, who resigned after Monarez was pushed out, citing her concerns about the ethics and the way that the CDC and HHS was being run. Both of them expressed significant concerns about potential changes coming to the childhood vaccine schedules. They expressed concerns about the new members that are on that panel. Secretary Kennedy had fired all 17 who had previously been on there, replaced them with a handful. I think there's somewhere between 5 and 10 members on that panel right now. And both Oury and Monarez in the hearing today expressed concerns that the people that Kennedy selected to put on that panel don't have the expertise needed to really be evaluating all the data and the science required to make good recommendations for parents and families across the country. One thing we did hear from Monarez, a criticism that you might hear from some people who are opposed to keeping the vaccine schedule the way that it is right now, say that these are vaccine mandates. And Monarez stressed a couple times in this hearing that the CDC doesn't mandate vaccine recommendations. They put out the recommendations, and by being recommended by the CDC, that means that insurance companies are required to pay for those shots. But changes to the recommendations means, maybe insurance companies won't pay for the vaccine even if someone were to opt in for it. So there are certainly a lot of complications to consider, a lot of elements to consider, and that's what we heard from Senator Bill Cassidy after the hearing. He was asked if that panel recommends changes later this week, should Americans have confidence in those recommended changes? And he flatly said no, and then went on to talk about the hepatitis B vaccine, one that seems to be a target for potential changes in the meeting this week, Del. That's something that he has experience in from his decades being a doctor, and he strongly supports keeping the hepatitis B vaccine as a recommendation for newborns in their first 24 hours of life. So a lot of eyes are going to be on this big panel meeting in the next couple days, Del.
Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen. Stephanie, as always, thank you very much.